I still remember the moment it hit me, sharp and cold, like ice water splashing across my chest. I had walked into the bedroom that evening, the quiet hum of the apartment wrapping around me like a soft fog, expecting the familiar, the mundane. And then I saw him. Not my husband, not the man I had shared a life with for years, but someone else entirely. His hair tumbled past his shoulders in glossy waves, his cheeks brushed with the faintest rose, eyes sparkling with a nervous excitement that felt foreign to me. There was a dress. Not just any dress, but one that seemed to have been chosen with an almost sacred reverence, soft pastel fabric clinging gently to curves I hadn't noticed before, curves that didn't match the man I thought I knew. My throat tightened, my chest constricted, and for a moment, I could only stare. He or she turned, and our eyes met. That single glance carried 1,000 unspoken words, but all I could hear in my own head was the deafening roar of confusion. I didn't expect you home so early, came the tentative voice, lilting and delicate, soft yet oddly familiar. I felt my stomach twist. My heart tried to run, but my feet remained rooted to the floor, betrayal and fascination coiling around each other like twin snakes. I tried to speak, but my voice felt useless, as if it had been stripped of the ability to articulate the complexity of what I was seeing. My husband, my lifelong partner, had been exploring a side of himself I'd never glimpsed, a hidden garden he hadn't invited me into. And yet, somehow, it didn't feel entirely alien. There was a vulnerability there that tugged at something deep inside me, a raw fragility that demanded recognition. The days that followed were a storm I didn't know how to navigate. She became someone else before my eyes, not entirely different, but undeniably transformed. The subtle curl of an eyelash, the gentle sway of a skirt, the measured way he or she walked across our small living room. Each detail was a revelation. I found myself watching, captivated and disoriented, torn between admiration and fear. I wanted to reach out, to ask questions, but every time I tried, the words crumbled under the weight of my own assumptions and insecurities. There was an intimacy in this new presence that unsettled me. I had married a man, I thought I knew him fully, and yet there was a layer of identity I hadn't encountered until now. And then came the message that would truly shatter the fragile balance of my understanding, a dating app notification on his phone. My hands shook as I read it. Met someone incredible, she's amazing, can't wait to see her again. My world tilted, my sense of reality fraying at the edges. This wasn't just a private transformation. He or she was seeking connection beyond me, connection that blurred lines I hadn't realized could be blurred. I spent nights lying awake, tracing the contours of his face in the dim moonlight, trying to reconcile the man I had married with the person I was watching in the mirror of our bedroom. My mind raced with questions that had no easy answers. Who was he beneath all this? Was this a phase, a secret indulgence, or an expression of something fundamental that I had overlooked? And what did it mean for us, for the life we had built, for the vows we had spoken in front of friends and family? And yet, amidst the confusion, a strange sense of awe began to bloom. I couldn't deny the beauty of the transformation, the courage it must have taken to stand there in the middle of our bedroom, fully exposed in ways I had never been able to see. There was artistry in the way he moved, a poetry in the way he adorned himself, a grace I had never learned to recognize in him as a man. And maybe, somewhere in the tangled mess of shock and disbelief, I realized that identity was not fixed, and love was far more complicated than I had allowed myself to imagine. The first confrontation came unexpectedly. I wasn't prepared to talk, but the weight of silence had become unbearable. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The look on his face was one of fear, anticipation, and a fragile hope that I would not retreat entirely. "I wanted to," he said softly, the words almost breaking as they left his lips. "I just didn't know how. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't know if you could understand or accept me." The raw honesty in that confession cut through the haze of confusion and fear that had settled over me. For the first time, I saw him, Not the husband I had married, not the stranger in the dress, but him. Fully human, fully exposed, and undeniably courageous. I wanted to step back, to reject the unfamiliar, but something deeper stirred in me, a mix of curiosity, empathy, and a dawning awareness that love could exist in forms I hadn't yet learned to see. I began asking questions, small and hesitant at first, about the feelings that led to this transformation, about the emotions behind the dresses, the makeup, the feminine gestures. And as he or she spoke, I realized that this journey wasn't just about clothes or appearances. It was about authenticity, about a quest to reconcile inner identity with outer presentation, about courage and fear intertwined in ways I had never confronted in my own life. Every morning after that first revelation felt like stepping into a new world. I watched him apply makeup with meticulous precision, selecting brushes and palettes as if performing a sacred ritual. I observed the subtle changes in his posture, the way his shoulders softened, the tilt of his head when he smiled. And though my heart occasionally ached with jealousy or confusion, there was also a thrill, a recognition that transformation could be beautiful, that vulnerability could be inspiring, and that love might survive, even thrive, in the spaces between certainty and discovery. But the dating app lingered like a shadow. The knowledge that he or she was seeking connection with others, testing the waters of this new identity, introduced tension I hadn't anticipated. I felt jealousy, fear, and a strange exhilaration all at once, emotions colliding and recombining in ways that made my chest hurt. I had to confront my own biases, my assumptions about gender, about fidelity, about what it meant to love someone whose identity was evolving before my eyes. It was a reckoning, not just with him, but with myself. The first time we went out together, fully dressed, was surreal. He wore a soft lavender blouse and a skirt that fluttered slightly as we walked. I felt eyes on us, some curious, some judgmental, but I also felt a protective pride I hadn't known I could harbor. I held his hand tightly, not as a possession, but as an anchor, a lifeline in a world that had suddenly become vast, complicated, and astonishingly intimate. That day, I realized that acceptance wasn't about understanding everything. It wasn't about erasing fear or confusion. It was about choosing to witness, to support, and to love a person in all their evolving complexity. Even now, months later, the memories of that first shocking revelation remain vivid. They echo in my chest like a heartbeat I can't quite quiet, reminding me that love is not static, that identity is fluid, and that courage often manifests in the quietest, most personal acts, like stepping into a dress, revealing a hidden self, and daring to hope that the people you love can follow you into the unknown. The days turned into weeks, and each morning felt like a negotiation with reality. I would wake, catch a glimpse of him, or her, in the mirror as she brushed long strands of hair away from her face, and my chest would tighten with that familiar ache of wonder and confusion. Sometimes I would feel proud, a swelling warmth as if I were witnessing a private miracle, and other times I would feel sharp pangs of doubt, as if the life I thought I knew was slipping through my fingers like sand. I started noticing little things, how she tilted her head slightly when nervous, the faint scent of floral perfume she always chose, the careful way she crossed her legs when sitting on the couch. Those small gestures became a map to a person I had known my whole life, yet was now seeing in a wholly new light. We began talking more openly, slowly, cautiously. "Do you ever feel scared?" I asked one evening, our knees brushing under the dim glow of the kitchen lamp. She hesitated, fingers curling around the edge of her coffee mug. "Every day," she admitted softly. "But I also feel alive. More me than I've ever been." That phrase, "more me than I've ever been," echoed in my mind for days. It was a declaration, a truth I could not ignore. I realized then that this transformation wasn't a rejection of our life together, but an invitation to understand a deeper, truer self. And yet, the sting of fear, the worry about what others might think, the unspoken question of how far this would go, lingered like a shadow over my heart. Our first real test came when we had to go grocery shopping together. I was terrified, not of her, not even of people staring, but of the internal storm that would rage within me. Walking beside her, holding the shopping basket, I couldn't stop studying her. She moved with a fluidity I had never associated with him, each step a quiet assertion of identity. And the reactions of strangers, a mix of glances, smiles, and brief moments of surprise, felt like a test of our courage. I realized that this wasn't just her journey. It was mine too. Every shared glance, every whispered reassurance, every small laugh in the cereal aisle became a tether that reminded me we were still together, still a team, even as everything else seemed to shift. One night, I caught her looking at old photos of us. Her fingers traced the edges of images, lingering on smiles that seemed innocent now, but once were the entire story of us. "I love these," she said, voice trembling, "but I also feel like I'm discovering someone else in them." I nodded, understanding that our past was a tapestry woven with memories, but now threaded with new truths I had yet to fully grasp. "It's still us," I said quietly, "just evolving." She smiled, a fragile, hopeful smile, and for a moment, the tension that had gripped me all these months loosened. Yet tension returned in quieter, subtler ways. She wanted to attend social events in her full presentation, to meet new people as her authentic self. I would stand beside her, my hand lightly touching hers, and feel the mixture of pride and anxiety knotting inside me. How would friends react? Family? Strangers on the street? Every outing became an emotional tightrope. And yet I noticed that each step she took with confidence seemed to lift something in me as well. I was learning to confront judgment, to navigate the unknown, to find courage I hadn't known I possessed. Then came the evening that shook me more profoundly than anything else, the night I discovered she had been talking to someone on a messaging app. It wasn't what I initially feared, not betrayal, not disinterest, but a connection to someone else who understood her, who had been walking a path she had just begun to explore. I sat there, phone trembling in my hand, feeling a mix of fear, jealousy, and awe. She caught me before I could retreat into silence. "I can explain," she said, voice steady but eyes vulnerable. "I didn't hide this to hurt you. I wanted someone who understands this part of me." I swallowed hard. Words caught in my throat. That was the moment I realized that love was not ownership. Love was trust, patience, empathy. It was holding someone's hand through storms, even when the winds threatened to tear us apart. I started to see patterns in myself I hadn't noticed before. I realized that the shock I felt initially had masked something deeper, a fear of losing control, of watching a life I had imagined unfold in ways I couldn't predict. But now, step by step, I began to let go of that fear. I watched as she experimented with new outfits, new hairstyles, even subtle changes in speech and gestures, and I found myself marveling at the artistry, the courage, the deliberate choice to live authentically. Slowly, admiration began to outweigh fear. Pride began to overcome confusion. And love in its most resilient, forgiving form, started to reassert itself in spaces I had once thought too fragile to hold it. The real turning point came unexpectedly, in a quiet moment at home. She was standing in the soft afternoon light, wearing a dress that shimmered slightly in the sun. Her eyes met mine, and I saw not just the person she was becoming, but the person I had always loved, reflected back with a clarity I hadn't expected. "You're beautiful," I said, words trembling but sincere. She reached out, fingers brushing mine, and smiled. A smile full of relief, gratitude, and something almost sacred. "So are you," she replied. "For seeing me, even when it scared you." That simple exchange, so loaded with vulnerability and truth, crystallized something I hadn't realized until that moment. Acceptance was not passive. It was active. It was a choice I could make every day, with intention and love, despite uncertainty and fear. We began to navigate the outside world differently after that. I started accompanying her to events as her partner, introducing her as herself, my heart swelling with a mix of pride and anxious anticipation. And with each introduction, each shared laugh, each moment of connection with others who accepted her, my own confidence grew. I realized that identity was not a threat to love. It was a challenge, yes, but also an opportunity to witness bravery, authenticity, and humanity in its rawest form. Yet even in our small victories, doubt occasionally seeped in. Late nights were the hardest. Hours spent reflecting on who we were becoming, and what it meant for the future. I would lie awake, feeling her breathing beside me, a rhythm that was familiar yet new, and wonder how many more changes, how many more revelations awaited us. And then I would remind myself, love was not about certainty. It was about presence, empathy, and unwavering willingness to journey alongside someone as they discover themselves. The emotional roller coaster continued, each day bringing new lessons, new challenges, and new moments of awe. And though the path was unpredictable, the stakes felt higher than ever. Not because of judgment or societal expectation, but because of the depth of connection, the intimacy of witnessing someone fully reveal themselves, and the courage it demanded from both of us to remain present, engaged, and loving. It wasn't just the outside world that tested us. It was the quiet, relentless self-reflection that came in the dark hours when no one else could see. Some nights, I would stare at her as she slipped into the dress she loved most, tracing the hem with a delicate finger, and I would feel a strange cocktail of awe, fear, and longing for clarity. I wanted to understand everything all at once, to name every emotion boiling inside me. But the truth was, there were no simple labels. Love, confusion, pride, jealousy, curiosity, they all tangled together, knotting themselves around my chest in ways that left me breathless. She noticed my silences, my moments of hesitation. One night, as we sat together on the worn couch in the living room, she reached for my hand, her touch gentle and grounding. "You've been quiet," she said, voice soft. I swallowed, unsure how to respond without betraying the swirl of emotions in my chest. "I'm processing," I admitted. "Everything is changing so fast, and I don't know how to fit it into what I thought I knew." Her smile was patient, tender, a quiet understanding that made me ache. "It's okay," she said. "You don't have to have all the answers. None of this is easy. But we're in it together, aren't we?" Together. The word carried a weight I hadn't realized until that moment. The realization hit me. This journey wasn't just about her transformation. It was about us, about how we could navigate this new terrain without losing the foundation of what we had built. And yet, each day brought new revelations, new ways in which I had to confront my assumptions about identity, attraction, and what it meant to love someone fully. The dating app continued to hover in the back of my mind, an unspoken test of my own boundaries. She had made friends there, people who understood her, who validated parts of her identity I couldn't yet fully grasp. I wrestled with jealousy, with fear that she might grow closer to someone else than she was to me. But I also began to see that these connections were not a threat. They were a lifeline, a bridge to the world she wanted to inhabit. And perhaps in a strange, indirect way, they were also a bridge for me, forcing me to confront my own insecurities, to expand my capacity for understanding and empathy. It was during one of these quiet, reflective periods that she suggested we try something new, a small gathering of friends, people who were supportive but unfamiliar with her full presentation. I felt a spike of anxiety, my stomach tightening as the thought of scrutiny, of judgment, made my hands clammy. But beneath the fear, there was a flicker of curiosity, a desire to witness her confidence in action, to see how she navigated the world as her true self. The evening arrived, and I followed her out of the apartment, heart pounding, trying to balance my protective instincts with the need to let her shine. She wore a soft, flowing dress in shades of teal, her hair styled perfectly, makeup subtle yet striking. I couldn't help but admire her. She was radiant, undeniably herself, moving with a grace that commanded attention without demanding it. I felt a rush of pride I hadn't known I could feel, tempered by lingering anxiety. At the gathering, I watched her interact with others, Noticing the confidence that radiated from her, the ease with which she navigated conversations, the laughter that seemed to flow effortlessly. And yet I also noticed the tension inside me, the instinct to hover, to correct, to protect. I realized then that love was not about control, it was about trust. Trusting her, trusting the process, and trusting that we could find a balance between her needs and mine. After the gathering, we walked home hand in hand, the night air crisp and quiet. "You were amazing tonight," I said, my voice catching slightly. She smiled, squeezing my hand gently. "So were you," she replied, "for staying by my side, even when it wasn't easy." That simple exchange crystallized something in me. Acceptance wasn't a passive state. It was an active choice, a daily practice of patience, empathy, and courage. Our relationship began to evolve in subtle but profound ways. I noticed changes in my own behavior, in how I perceived intimacy, communication, and connection. I was learning to let go of rigid expectations, to embrace fluidity, to find joy in moments of shared vulnerability. And she, in turn, was learning to navigate her own identity with honesty and courage, aware of the impact her journey had on those she loved. Yet even in these moments of growth, there were challenges that tested the strength of our bond. One afternoon, I discovered a journal she had been keeping, filled with reflections on her transformation, her fears, her desires, and her hopes for the future. Reading her words was like stepping into her mind, experiencing the intensity of her emotions, the depth of her self-awareness, and the courage it took to confront societal expectations and internalized fears. I felt a mix of awe, guilt, and profound respect. Here was someone I had loved all my life, yet now revealed in ways I could not have anticipated, demanding a level of understanding and empathy I had never had to summon before. We spent hours talking that evening, discussing the journal, sharing our fears, hopes, and dreams. It was exhausting, emotionally draining, but also exhilarating. I realized that love, in its truest form, was not easy or predictable. It required patience, courage, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. And for the first time, I felt that our relationship had entered a new dimension, one defined not by rigid roles or expectations, but by mutual respect, vulnerability, and the relentless pursuit of authenticity. And then came an unexpected twist. She met someone from the app in person, a trans woman who had been on a parallel journey of self-discovery. I felt a surge of panic at first, my mind racing with fear of comparison, loss, and inadequacy. But as I observed the interaction, I saw something remarkable. Connection, understanding, empathy. She laughed freely, shared experiences, and came back to me with a glow of confidence I hadn't seen before. That night, lying in bed, she whispered, "Meeting her helped me see myself more clearly." I realized then that love was not diminished by external connections. It could be strengthened by them, as long as trust and communication remained intact. The months that followed were a journey of constant negotiation, reflection, and growth. We explored new social spaces, experimented with styles, attended events as a team, and confronted societal judgment together. Each challenge brought us closer, forced us to communicate more honestly, and revealed strengths we hadn't known existed. I discovered resilience, empathy, and courage in myself I didn't know I possessed, and she blossomed into a version of herself I had never imagined, radiant, confident, and unapologetically authentic. Through it all, one truth became undeniable. Identity is fluid, love is resilient, and courage often manifests in quiet, intimate acts of self-expression. Watching her transform, grow, and embrace her truth was not always easy, but it was awe-inspiring. And slowly, I began to understand that the person I loved had never really changed. They had simply revealed themselves in a new light, one that demanded understanding, patience, and unwavering love. The next challenge came when family entered the picture. I had hoped that time, patience, and gradual exposure would soften their reactions, but the reality was far more complicated. One afternoon, My mother called, her voice tinged with confusion and concern. "I don't understand," she said slowly. "Is this permanent? Is he happy?" Her questions felt loaded, not with judgment, exactly, but with fear, with an inability to see beyond the labels she had grown up with. My chest tightened. I wanted to defend her, to explain, to make her understand that happiness was not defined by convention, but the words stuck in my throat. How do you explain identity, courage, and authenticity in a single conversation when the other person only sees what they've been taught to see? She stood beside me, calm yet vulnerable, her hand finding mine. "I know this is hard," she said, voice soft. "But you've always been you, and I'm still here. I hope you can understand that." The tenderness in her words was a lifeline. For the first time, I realized that this wasn't just her journey. It was a shared challenge, a collective negotiation between love, fear, and acceptance. And while the path was uncertain, there was a fragile hope that patience and honesty could bridge even the widest gaps. The tension wasn't only external. At times, it bubbled within me, a relentless undertow of fear and insecurity. I caught myself comparing her to others, to people she met online, to imagined standards of femininity and beauty. I hated myself for it, but the feelings were real. One evening, as she adjusted the hem of her skirt, I found myself blurting, "Do you ever feel like someone else could be better?" The words were clumsy, desperate, and I immediately regretted them. She looked at me with quiet sorrow, and for a moment, I thought I had fractured something irreparable. "I don't need anyone else to be better," she said gently, fingers brushing mine. "I need honesty, I need understanding, I need you. But I also need to explore who I am fully. That doesn't take away from us. It strengthens it if we let it." Her words were balm, yet they also cut deep. I realized that love was not about possession, control, or predictability. It was about witnessing growth, embracing vulnerability, and confronting the uncomfortable truth that sometimes love asks more than we think we can give. Social events continued to test our resolve. Walking hand in hand through a crowded restaurant or attending a friend's party became exercises in courage. Each glance from strangers, each whispered comment, became a subtle reminder that authenticity was still radical, that the world was not always gentle to those who dared to redefine themselves. And yet, with each step, I noticed a transformation in myself. I was learning to navigate judgment, to focus on connection rather than perception, to celebrate her courage instead of fearing it. It was exhausting, yes, but also exhilarating. One night, during a quiet walk in the park, I asked the question I had been holding back for weeks. "Do you ever regret showing this side of yourself to me?" Her laugh was soft, tinged with sadness. "Never," she said. "It scared me at first, how you'd react, but hiding myself was never an option. I wanted you to see me, all of me, and you're still here." The relief in her voice was palpable, but so was the weight of my guilt. I realized then that acceptance was not a one-time event. It was a constant, ongoing commitment to being present, to listening, to adjusting my own expectations. Then came the first real test of trust. She received an invitation to attend a support group for trans women, an evening where she could be herself fully, without fear or reservation. My initial reaction was panic. The thought of her interacting with others, exploring parts of her identity I couldn't fully access, felt like a threat. And yet, beneath that fear, I recognized an opportunity, a chance to witness her growth, to support her courage, and to learn more about empathy than I had ever known. The evening of the group arrived, and I felt a gnawing anxiety as she left the apartment, dressed in a flowing emerald blouse and skirt, hair perfectly styled. I stood by the window, watching her walk away, feeling an unexpected surge of pride and longing. I realized then that trust was not passive. It required courage, surrender, and the willingness to let go of fear, even when it twisted my stomach. Hours later, she returned, radiant, exhausted, and brimming with new stories. "It was incredible," she said, eyes shining. "I felt fully seen." and it reminded me why this journey matters. I nodded, words failing me, but my heart swelling with relief and awe. In that moment, I understood that her courage was contagious, that it pushed me to confront my own limitations, my own fears, and my capacity for love in its most expansive, patient form. We began experimenting with her presentation more deliberately at home. Different hairstyles, subtle changes in makeup, new outfits. I watched her transform, sometimes in silence, sometimes with tentative comments that sparked laughter or reflection. I noticed the subtle shifts in her demeanor, the way confidence radiated from her when she felt truly comfortable in her own skin. And I began to see a pattern. Her courage forced me to confront my own insecurities, to examine my assumptions about gender, attraction, and the essence of intimacy. But growth was not linear. There were nights of tension, where jealousy or fear flared unexpectedly. I would lie awake, tracing her sleeping form with my eyes, wondering if I could truly adapt to a life that defied so many of my prior expectations. She would wake, sensing my unrest, and hold me close, whispering, "We're navigating this together, one step at a time." Those words became my anchor, a reminder that love was not about perfection or certainty, but about presence, patience, and courage. Then came the subtle, yet profound realization that our intimacy had changed, not in a diminishing way, but in a deepening one. Physical closeness, once defined by conventional norms, became infused with emotional resonance. Holding hands, brushing hair from a forehead, sharing quiet moments of laughter or reflection, these acts became sacred, charged with meaning and tenderness. I realized that love could transform as fluidly as identity, that connection was not fixed by expectation but enhanced by vulnerability, trust, and authenticity. And yet, lurking beneath the surface, an unspoken tension remained. The knowledge that she continued to connect with others online, that she was exploring facets of herself I could not always access, introduced a subtle anxiety I could not ignore. But I also recognized that this tension was a reflection of my own growth, a mirror showing me where I needed to expand my capacity for trust, patience, and empathy. In quiet moments, I would watch her stand before the mirror, hair cascading over shoulders, makeup highlighting features that had always been there but were now revealed with deliberate care. I felt awe, longing, fear, and pride all at once. And I realized that this journey, hers, mine, ours, was far from over. The challenges, revelations, and moments of joy were ongoing, unpredictable, and profound. But through it all, one truth crystallized: love is not static. Identity is not fixed. Courage, authenticity, and empathy are the threads that hold us together, even when the world feels uncertain, judgmental, or unforgiving. The turning point came on a quiet Sunday morning, the kind where the sunlight spills lazily through the curtains and time seems to stretch, unhurried, over the apartment. She was at the dresser, carefully choosing an outfit, humming softly to herself, the sound both familiar and startling in its new intimacy. I watched, hesitant, unsure if I should speak or remain silent. My chest tightened, not with fear this time, but with a profound, almost overwhelming admiration. Every movement, every small decision, seemed imbued with purpose, a quiet declaration of self. "I think I'll wear this one today," she said, holding up a soft mauve dress. Her eyes met mine, and in that gaze was a mix of expectation and gentle challenge. I nodded, words unnecessary. There was a language here, unspoken yet deeply understood, a rhythm of trust and love that had developed over months of shared revelation. And yet, even in that small moment, I felt the subtle stirrings of doubt. How much of this world could I inhabit with her? How much could I expand my own sense of identity to match the fluidity she was embracing so effortlessly? The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of new experiences, each one a test of patience, courage, and resilience. She wanted to attend an art exhibit opening in the city, a space known for its acceptance, but also for its subtle scrutiny. I felt the familiar twinge of anxiety, a mixture of protective instinct and fear of exposure. And yet, beneath it, there was curiosity, a desire to witness her navigate this world fully, unapologetically. We dressed together, shared quiet laughter over makeup choices, and finally stepped into the evening air, hand in hand, a silent pact of solidarity. At the gallery, I watched her with a mixture of awe and disorientation. She moved through the crowd with ease, engaging in conversation, laughter, and subtle gestures that radiated confidence. And yet, each interaction, each glance from strangers, seemed to ripple through me, a reminder that my own journey of acceptance was ongoing. I realized then that love was not just about embracing her authenticity, it was about embracing the parts of myself that had been rigid, fearful, and constrained. That night, walking home through quiet streets, she paused under a street lamp, its light casting a gentle halo around her. "Do you see me?" she asked, voice soft but insistent. "Really see me?" I felt a lump in my throat. "I'm trying," I admitted. "More than I ever have." She smiled, a slow, radiant smile, and reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "That's all I ask," she said. "To be seen, to be understood." And in that moment, I realized that seeing her, truly seeing her, was an act of love as profound as any vow we had ever made. Our intimacy deepened in ways I hadn't anticipated. Quiet touches, lingering glances, shared laughter, and whispered reflections became the core of our connection. I noticed the subtle ways she expressed herself, the careful curation of her appearance, the small rituals that affirmed her identity, and I marveled at the courage it took to inhabit those rituals fully. And slowly, I began to see a reflection of my own growth, a willingness to confront discomfort, embrace vulnerability, and recognize that love could evolve as fluidly as identity itself. Yet challenges persisted. One evening, I found her quietly crying in the bedroom, makeup smudged, hair disheveled, a rare crack in the carefully constructed confidence. "What's wrong?" I asked, heart clenching. She shook her head. "It's nothing or maybe everything," she whispered. "Sometimes it feels like I'm living in two worlds, one where I'm accepted, and one where I'm constantly explaining, defending, justifying. And I'm exhausted." I pulled her into my arms, holding her as she trembled, the weight of her vulnerability pressing into me. "You're not alone," I murmured. "We'll face it together. I promise." And in that embrace, I understood that love was not just a celebration of joy, it was a refuge in moments of fear, sorrow, and uncertainty. The next months were marked by a careful balance of courage and care. She attended social gatherings, support groups, and events where her identity was embraced, and I stood beside her, sometimes proudly, sometimes nervously, always learning. I discovered reservoirs of patience I hadn't known I possessed, and she discovered a partner willing to witness, support, and celebrate her fully, even when the world felt unforgiving. Each outing, each conversation, each shared silence was a lesson in empathy, authenticity, and resilience. And then came an unexpected revelation, a conversation that would reshape my understanding of her journey. One evening, she confided in me about the complexity of her emotions, the intersection of fear, excitement, and longing that came with inhabiting her true self. "Sometimes," she said, voice trembling, "I feel like I'm becoming someone entirely new, someone I've always been, but who scares even me. And I worry that you might not be able to follow me all the way." My heart ached. "I may stumble," I admitted. "I may falter, but I will follow. I won't let go." Her tears glistened in the lamplight, and she pressed her forehead to mine, whispering, "Thank you. That means everything." Through these intimate, challenging, and profoundly human experiences, I began to understand that identity and love were not fixed. They were fluid, evolving, and demanding of courage. She was teaching me to embrace uncertainty, to find beauty in vulnerability, and to recognize the transformative power of authenticity. And I was learning that love was not a destination, but a journey, a continuous act of witnessing, supporting, and celebrating the evolving self of the person you cherish most. And yet, even in these moments of profound connection, the dating app, the social scrutiny, and the world outside our apartment continued to whisper questions, doubts, and fears. But I was no longer paralyzed by them. I had grown, just as she had grown, and I realized that our love was not threatened by external forces. It was strengthened by the challenges, the revelations, and the unflinching courage required to navigate a world that often struggled to understand authenticity. By now, I had learned to cherish the small victories. The smile she gave when she tried a new outfit, the laughter we shared in moments of quiet understanding, the gentle touch that reaffirmed our bond. And I understood that these moments were sacred, fragile, and infinitely precious. In embracing her, I had also begun to embrace a deeper version of myself, one capable of patience, empathy, and unwavering support. The morning sunlight poured through the windows like liquid gold, casting long, warm beams across the apartment. I watched her move around the room with ease, hair falling in soft waves, a pastel blouse tucked neatly into a flowing skirt. She paused for a moment, looking at me with that mixture of anticipation and quiet challenge that had become so familiar. "Are you ready?" she asked, voice soft but deliberate. "Ready." That word hung in the air between us, loaded with layers I had only begun to understand. Ready for what, exactly? For the world outside? For each other? For ourselves? I took a deep breath, feeling the steady rhythm of her heartbeat through the gentle press of her hand against mine, and realized that ready was never a perfect state. Ready was a choice, a leap, a promise, and I chose it. We walked through the city streets hand in hand, each step an affirmation of the journey we had shared and the path that still stretched ahead. I noticed the subtle ways she carried herself, shoulders softened, chin slightly lifted, a quiet elegance that seemed to radiate from within. I had witnessed the transformation countless times, yet it never ceased to awe me. There was courage in every movement, authenticity in every smile, and a quiet power in the way she existed fully, unapologetically. And I felt proud, not in the possessive sense, but in the profound, almost sacred way of someone who has witnessed bravery up close. We arrived at a cafe, our favorite spot in the city, and I watched her interact with the barista, exchanging casual smiles and light conversation. The ease, the naturalness, the authenticity of her presence struck me anew. I realized then that the world had shifted for both of us. The anxiety that had gripped me in those early days had not disappeared. It had been transformed, like a raw stone polished by constant friction, into something resilient, reflective, and capable of holding awe, pride, and love simultaneously. Over coffee, we talked about everything and nothing: the exhibit we wanted to visit, the support group she had been attending, small dreams we had whispered to each other in private moments of hope. And as we spoke, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey we had undertaken together. Every challenge, every moment of doubt, every pang of fear had led us here, to a place where vulnerability was strength, authenticity was beauty, and love was expansive enough to hold complexity without fracturing. After our walk, we returned home, the city's hum fading behind us. She stood by the window, gazing at the skyline, her reflection a mingling of sunlight and shadow. "I couldn't have done this without you," she said, voice barely above a whisper. My heart swelled. "And I couldn't have done this without you," I replied. It was true in ways deeper than either of us could articulate. She had guided me into empathy, courage, and understanding, just as I had learned to hold steady through fear, uncertainty, and discovery. Evenings became our sanctuary. We shared meals, laughter, and quiet reflection, the apartment now a space of safety, exploration, and affirmation. I began noticing subtleties I had missed before. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when concentrating, the delicate curl of her fingers when she reached for something, the soft inflection in her voice when she was excited or nervous. Each small gesture was a revelation, a reminder that identity is layered, nuanced, and evolving, and that love requires attention, presence, and intentionality. The final challenge, however, was not external, it was internal. One night, lying beside her, I felt a wave of fear wash over me. What if I can't keep up? I whispered, voice tinged with raw vulnerability. She turned, eyes searching mine. You don't have to keep up, she said gently. You just have to be here. For me, for us. That's enough. And in that moment, I realized the profound truth of our journey. Love is not about control, comparison, or rigid expectations. Love is about presence, empathy, and unwavering commitment to witness the evolution of the person you cherish. Weeks later, we took a small trip together, escaping the hum of the city for a quiet cabin in the woods. The snow lay soft on the ground, and the air was crisp and alive. We walked through the trees, hand in hand, each footstep a rhythm of discovery. She laughed freely, the sound carrying through the stillness, and I realized I had begun to laugh with her, unself-consciously, without fear or expectation. It was the laughter of two people who had navigated storms, confronted fears, and emerged on the other side with a bond deeper than either could have imagined. In that wilderness, removed from judgment, expectation, and noise, I understood that this was what it meant to truly see someone, to witness the full complexity of identity, emotion, and courage, and to respond with love, patience, and devotion. She was not just my partner. She was a living testament to bravery, vulnerability, and the power of authenticity. And I, in turn, was not just a husband learning to accept a new identity. I was a person learning to expand the boundaries of empathy, courage, and love itself. Returning home, the apartment felt transformed, infused with the quiet confidence of shared triumphs and lessons learned. She slipped into a soft lavender dress, the fabric flowing around her like liquid grace. I paused, drinking in the sight, feeling the depth of emotion that swelled in my chest, love, pride, awe, and a touch of disbelief at the journey we had undertaken. She turned, eyes meeting mine, and smiled. We've come so far, she said softly. Yes, I whispered. And we're still moving forward. We held each other for a long time, letting the world fall away. In that embrace, I understood something I had only glimpsed in fragments before. Love does not demand perfection. Identity does not demand conformity. Courage does not demand recognition. What matters is presence, witness, and unwavering commitment to the journey, however unpredictable it may be. And as night fell, the city lights casting gentle reflections across the windows, I knew that whatever challenges awaited us, social scrutiny, personal doubt, the uncharted territory of evolving identities, we would face them together. Not as master and follower, not as teacher and student, but as partners in the truest sense, two people learning, growing, and loving in a world that often struggles to understand the beauty of authenticity. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and I felt the warmth of her breath, the quiet rhythm of her heartbeat. In that moment, nothing else existed, no judgment, no fear, no uncertainty. Only us. Only this. Only love, as fluid, courageous, and enduring as the journey we had shared. And in that stillness, I finally understood, love is not a destination. It is a journey. And sometimes, the most extraordinary transformations are not just those that occur in the body, but those that happen in the heart, in the mind, and in the spaces between two people daring to see each other fully and to stay. We stayed. We chose each other. And for the first time, I felt certain that the future, whatever shape it took, was ours to navigate together, with courage, authenticity, and an unshakable bond that neither time nor change could unravel.